What we're doing in this building is we are installing air purifiers, and we have been studying air particle concentration data before installing the purifiers and after installing the purifiers. This is a sensor that's sitting outdoors, and then we have a sampling line here also for another sensor. So there's two sensors simultaneously sampling outdoor concentrations of particles, and then there's 3 additional sensors inside that are measuring indoor concentrations of particles. So really the key metric we're looking for is that indoor-outdoor particle ratio. And we want to see how that changes once you install the air purifiers. If that ratio goes down, it means that it's then cleaner inside than it was after you installed the air purifiers. And we want to quantify how much cleaner it is, because that tells us how much we've reduced people's exposure. So this instrument can't actually see ultrafine particles, but the one with the sampling line there can. And by putting them side by side, we really want to see if they tell the same story. It takes an expensive instrument to measure ultrafine particles, but if we can demonstrate reduction in what we expect to be ultrafine particle concentration with a less expensive instrument, then it makes it easier to do that monitoring and evaluation. This is the air purifier. These are super effective at removing ultrafine particles as well as bigger particles. They do it fast enough to keep up with infiltration of particles from the outdoor environment. They're really robust and don't have to change the filter very often. At a broader level, we want to see air purifiers in every classroom and municipal buildings and residences. And the more data that we can collect to demonstrate the efficacy of these air purifiers and how much it actually is reducing people's exposure, then we can make the case that there should be more investments made like this. We do a lot of homework before we put sensors up. Right across the river here is the Wheelabrator incinerator plant. There's aircraft landing directly overhead and taking off overhead when runway 22L is being used. And then Route 1 is right here. So depending on where the wind is coming from, we might have a heavy influence from Route 1, and we'll be able to see what the fingerprint and the air quality data looks like. Same with if the wind's coming from the trash incinerator, we'll be able to see what that fingerprint looks like, and we'll be able to distinguish between the two of them. Same with aircraft influence. If the wind's coming from the direction of the airport, we'll be able to see what that fingerprint looks like. These sensors are lower cost sensors. And the reason that we're using them is so that the network that we're building is truly community owned. You can access these data in real time on an app, so people can inform their outdoor decisions and activities based on air pollution. And then it's also owned by the community to use for advocacy work, to kind of pull back the veil on the fact that there's been no air quality measurements in this area for ever, decades and decades, right? And now, armed with these data, they can do more effective advocacy work. What you gain in the ability to set up a whole network of these things, you lose some in the sensitivity of the instrument. And so that's one of the answers we're trying to get with this work is, how much can we tell about landing aircraft, taking off aircraft, versus just wind coming from the direction of the airport or other sources. When it comes to health and reducing people's exposure to pollutants, we want it all done 10 years ago, not 10 months from now, right? That said, I think it's a big deal that filtration was recommended for these local communities. I think there's movements in that direction. We have a lot of support from local elected officials at the state, city, and even federal level. I think things are going to happen. Some of what we're doing right now is collecting the data to actually demonstrate that if you put those air purifiers in, it's going to reduce people's exposure.